Ready.
This is Alex Deagiar. Are you ready to pod?
Let's go again. Quiet, please. Ready.
All right, so I'm here with Mick Holly here on Pod with me. Mick, are you ready to pod?
Oh, I'm burning. I'm on fire. Let's go, buddy.
He's on fire. Mick, first tell everybody where you're from.
So I'm from England originally. If you looked at the map of Great Britain and you took a point that was the furthest away from the sea, right in the middle of the country, it's actually called the Midlands, and the town I'm from there is a small parochial town called Derby in the county of Derbyshire. So that's where I grew up.
When and why was the reason that you came to the U.S.?
Well, it all started, I guess, when I was a lad. Yeah, I remember growing up. Can you believe we didn't even have a telephone in our house? We didn't get a telephone until I think I was 11 years old, and that was a party line. A party line is where one of our neighbors also shared the line, so you pick the phone up first to see if anybody was talking, and if there were, you could listen into their conversation, which was rather bizarre. And we didn't even get a television. I remember getting a television when I was 7 years old. So I'm in this small town, and I always wanted to see more of the world. So I was the first person in the family to go off to college. I went 50 miles down the road to the town of Birmingham, to a red brick university, where I studied chemistry of all things. And then once I'd been to university, I've always had a wanderlust. I think if I'd grown up, a century ago, I'd either be part of the Royal Navy or I'd be some kind of pirate on the seven seas, just because I wanted to. The UK is just the rock, right? You to see the world. Everybody in the UK has a passport, right? Because we all go over and travel in Europe. So just that desire to go and see the world just got bigger and bigger and bigger until 26 years ago. I got somebody a job with a company in the US. I called him up and I said, "Hey, did you get that job?" He said, "Yeah, I'm the president of the company now." I said, "Well, do you need a sales guy?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Okay, I'm it." I said, "When do you want me to start?" He said, 2 weeks. And my wife, we met that day. She came to pick me up. I was somewhere else. I said, "Oh, by the way, I've got a new job." And she said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Yeah, we're moving to the States in 2 weeks."
Whoa, what was her reaction?
She was a little shocked, I have to say, because we have a 4-year-old and 2-year-old daughters. But when we got married, I told her, I said, "Look, I got three. There are three things I would wish for in our marriage, apart from a loving relationship. Number one, that we have 4 children. I'd like to have a big family. Secondly, I'd like to live abroad." She says, "Well, why?" I said, "Well, when we get, when I was a kid, right, when I was 15, 16, I would cycle 20 miles to go to a party, right? We didn't have cars there, not like here, everybody gets a car when they're 15. And I said, when our kids are that age, they're going to be getting on planes and flitting all over the world. And I don't want them to look at us and say, 'Oh, our parents are real squares.' So, I want us to have a bit of international experience." And then the third thing was I'd like to play golf every Saturday. Well, we have 3 children. So we had our 2 daughters, and then we had our son here when we came to the US. We are living abroad here in the US for the last 26 years. And wow. I do get to play golf every weekend. So, hey, my dreams are fulfilled.
Your dreams are fulfilled. You visualized them. You were seeing it. You knew it was going to happen, and that's why I believe it must have happened. You have to see it to believe it and make it reality.
There were a few bumps on the way, but it worked.
Yeah, there's always obstacles. So when you arrived to the U.S. that first day, I'm sure you had you envisioned something. Nobody envisions obstacles when you never expect them. But you arrived to the U.S. and what happened?
Well,
was it your first time in the U.S.?
No, it wasn't my first time in the US.
Okay.
I'd been probably 10 years earlier, I'd come for a vacation, but it was a big culture shock. So, of course, what I needed, I'm in business, I needed a phone. So I went to the AT&T store. I said, yeah, I'd like a phone, please. And they looked my name up and they say, well, we can't let you have a phone. I said, well, why not? He says, you don't have a credit history. So, well, what's that? Well, your use of credit cards. I said, I don't have a credit card. My dad told me never to have anything on credit. I don't have a credit history. I don't have a credit card. You can call up the bank and find out how much money I've got. You can call my bank in the UK and they can see I've been paying my mortgage for the last, 10 years. I'm a very, upstanding person. But no, Mr. Holly, you don't have a credit history. We can't let you have a phone. Can you believe that?
Wow.
So I'd never operated on credit ever, always cash.
Very
Now
smart.
in the US, that's very, very different. Now, interestingly, my daughter, who was 4 and is now 30, she actually got a job in Japan teaching English just a couple of years ago, and they run their entire economy on cash.
Wow.
When she flew out to cash, she had to pay for her apartment 3 months in advance, and she had to take a money belt with cash in it. But America, it's all about credit and credit history. So that was
unfortunately.
And nobody would sell me a car again because I didn't have a credit history. I couldn't get a car.
That's amazing.
But that was not the biggest issue. So I told my company, I said, look, I'm coming over with my wife. We've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. This is, a bit of a surprise. I said, don't schedule any meetings for me until I get the family settled in. And so somebody didn't listen, and they set me a meeting in Dallas. So we moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. They set me a meeting for Dallas at 8:00 in the morning the following day, which meant I had to get a flight out on the day that we arrived and leave my wife, 4-year-old and 2-year-old, in this house that we'd rented. And the house didn't have any lamps. It didn't have ceiling lights. It had no phone. So
Oh, wow.
she was sitting there in the dark with a candle on a blanket, and I left to go off to Dallas. That was not the greatest of starts. But anyway, my company to be a guarantor, so we were able to get a car and eventually a phone. And over the years, I fell into the American way of spending gaily with my credit card.
Oh boy. Did you get into credit card debt like everybody?
No, I don't have debt, but I do use it. And just because you need that every time you go and shop for something, they want to know what your score is.
That's true. Besides the credit, what was your biggest obstacle in adapting to being here in the US as to being in the UK?
That's a great question. The job that I was doing, I was working with Fortune 500 companies, helping them design large change programs. So companies like General Motors, Shell, Dow, DuPont. So I was in a different city every day. I'd get on a plane, I'd fly, I'd spend so much time in an aircraft. It was unbelievable. So it was just the travel and being away from home. When I was back in England, we lived just outside London, and my office was in London. I'd go into the office on the train, and then all my meetings I could get to in a cab around London, and I'd be back home every evening, with the family. Now here I was, 4 nights a week, sometimes 5 nights a week. I was away from home, with the kids growing up fast, 4-year-old and 2-year-old. You would see them change. I'd leave on maybe a Sunday night or a Monday morning, and when I came back on a Friday, you'd see different things, and they picked up certain things, and their accents started to change slightly, and they started to use US mannerisms. So that was a big strain, just being away from. But my wife's a rock star, and she didn't complain.
What are US mannerisms?
Just using different words. So people today, even when I use words that people don't use very often. So I'll say something like, the Americans will say awesome. And so the kids will say, this is awesome and that's awesome. Whereas in the UK, we'd say, oh, that's brilliant.
Got it.
Very, very kind of different. And the syntax is slightly different. So you would
I actually like brilliant better, but yeah.
you would write your congressman. Well, what do you mean you write it down on a piece of paper? You write to your MP, your Minister of Parliament. You write to them. So the dropping of certain words was a little
mind-boggling.
It's just a little different. I remember I had I got a convertible because we're in the Carolinas here, and the roof mechanism was a problem, and so I went to the repair shop and I said, there's a problem with a hood. And they go, okay. So they lift up the front of the car. I said, what are you doing? It's the mechanism surely not there. Well, you said the problem was the hood's broken. I said, no, that's the bonnet. So we call the hood the bonnet on a car. And so I was
they weren't understanding you.
No. So they would completely all over the place. So I had to learn how to even speak car here in the US.
Well, I see you kept your beautiful accent, so that's good.
It's surprisingly, I haven't lost it. Every day somebody comes and says, "Oh, I like your accent." I said, "Yes, I practice it every day."
Good. It's good. It's important not to lose it. It's part of your roots. It's part of where you're from.
Exactly.
When you go visit the UK, how do you feel?
Interesting. It's interesting. I thought. I think I finally made, because I'm a dual citizen, right? So I've got a US nationality, but I still hold a British passport. And we had a vacation this year. We were flying to Portugal, and our flights got messed up, and so we had to go via London. And we got off the plane in London. We had a day in London. I thought, I feel really homesick. So we wandered around London. We had lunch in Covent Garden. We walked around. And after about a day, I thought, I've got my fill now. I'm not so homesick. I just need to go there a little bit at a time, see the relatives, a little dose. So, no, this is our home now. And good old Blighty is the nickname for England, is a fond and lovely memory, but our family, our immediate family, is here, right? They've grown up here.
Now, did you have a goal? Where did you want to get to, as far as career?
I think one of my, if I look back on the trajectory of my career, it was so much fun at the time. The consulting services I was offering seemed to be very attractive. People wanted to use them, and it was I just showed up and things magically happened. It was unbelievable, to the point that I didn't realize how magical everything had come together. And so I built a big business in a particular industry sector, happened to be industrial chemical companies. And somebody in the company said, no, Mick, you're really, really good at opening new business. You're wasted working with these existing clients. You should go and open up a new business and grow the company that way. Hey, tell you what, oil and gas, we want you to work in oil and gas. And by the way, right now, oil and gas is big in Canada, so you need to get to Calgary. So I was commuting up and down to Calgary for like 2 years. And I'd spent maybe 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years building this practice where I knew everybody, I networked with everybody. I had so many stories that I could share about their peers that my credibility with them was huge. Then I moved into this sector where nobody knew who I was. I didn't have any stories. And I suddenly realized, that probably wasn't a good idea. So I didn't strategically have a good plan. I was just so successful. I just kept doing what I
You
was
were going
doing.
with the flow.
I went with the flow, and unfortunately, the flow stopped. And then I crashed. I crashed and burned for
Wow.
quite some time. Um, and as you do, you when you are incredibly successful, you think that you're going to continue to be incredibly successful. So we decided to build this massive house. We overspent on this house,
Wow.
and we maxed our mortgage payments based on, I was doing incredibly well at the time. And of course, when the flow stopped, that was, really, really bad. And we ended up in foreclosure. And, from being at the top of my profession and being, in a great place, we went to the darkest. I remember being, we drove to the North Carolina coast, Myrtle Beach, and we passed a shoe store, and I needed some shoes. I remember at the time turning to my wife, I said, these shoes I've got, they're pretty old. There's a sale on. Do you think I can afford another pair of shoes? And that was to the
Wow.
level at which our free cash flow, I didn't have any money. It was a
That's a
really, really big fall. That was
that's a
that
hard
was
adjustment.
It was. It was. So I had to dig. I've been digging myself out of that hole for a few years now.
So that was you were at the height of your career, let's say, and then all of a sudden you crash and you were kind of in denial when it happened because you kept on going, purchasing the house, getting the house, and then you went to foreclosure. And now what? Now what was your plan?
Okay, so I'm in my 60s now, and I still don't believe that I've reached my full potential. Right, I've got so much that I want to do, and so now what I'm doing is I run my own consulting business, working with privately held businesses. But I believe that because I would say to myself, look, to that point, Alex, I was talking about, if I'd only known then, I would have invested in that chemical sector. I'd become, more of a industry thought leader and really built a strategy around that as opposed to tactically just doing it. And I said to myself, well, look, if only 25 years ago I'd have known these things. And then I said to myself about a year ago, I got 25 more years and I'm smarter than I was 25 years ago. So stop saying that and start doing something about it. So that's the journey that I'm on, is my next 25 years. Now, we had a little bit of a hiccup
Mm-hmm.
about 3 years ago, and I had my leg was I was doing a lot of driving, a lot of sitting, and I got a pain in my leg, and my leg swelled up. And after about a week, I thought, better go see the doctor. So I went to see my GP, and she says, oh, well, it's either a sprain or it could be a clot, but we better rule out the clot. So we'll send you to the local hospital and they'll do an ultrasound. So I went to the hospital. They did the ultrasound. The lady put the ultrasound on my leg, and in like 10 seconds, she said, "Yep, you got a clot. Your leg's completely blocked." They whisked
And
me
how
in.
was it? How was it swollen? What?
So my leg was probably, my right leg was, the calf was probably twice as big. So it was definitely an issue. And then they put you in the MRI, and they said, well, unfortunately, the clot has now started to fragment, and those fragments have gone into your lungs, and now those clots are in your lungs. It's not really good. So they start putting you on blood thinners, and they start doing all of this testing. They go and start to have to go and do a heart scan to see if the clots have damaged my heart. It was really pretty scary.
Yeah.
And I said to the doctor, I said, hey, if I hadn't come in today, would it have gone away by itself? He says, no, you'd be dead. So I thanked my GP for saving my life.
Yeah.
But a little bit of a shock. So then I said, well, if I want this 25 years of being able to create, to work, to add value, to support the family, I got to be healthy. So I thought I got to exercise more. So I decided that I would start swimming. So I started going down the pool, and I'm swimming a lap here and a lap there. And I thought, well, it started to get a little bit humdrum, a little monotonous. I thought, I need a goal. I need a big goal. What would be a big goal for swimming? Well, I thought the biggest goal in swimming, well, one of the biggest goals is swimming the English Channel. That is the body of water between England and France. And at its narrowest point is 21 miles. So I decided I would swim 21 miles across the English Channel at temperatures of about 57 degrees in rough tides and jellyfish.
Wow.
So, 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 and here's some stats for you. You know how many people have climbed Mount Everest?
How many?
6,300.
Wow.
Do you know how many people have swum the English Channel?
How many?
1,800.
Oh my God.
So it's quite hard. So it is a big goal. So I thought I'd never had a swimming lesson. So I go down the pool. I got a swimming lesson at the rec center. It wasn't very good. So I'm very disappointed. And I'm swimming on my own. And I see a guy in the corner, and he's teaching this student. And he's talking to her at both ends. I thought, well, at least he's giving instruction. I'm going to go over there and see what he's about. So I sit there on a chair and I wait for a lull in his coaching. And I approach him with a rather stupid question. I said, do you do swimming lessons? And he goes, dude, that's what I'm doing right now. I said, okay.
You broke the ice,
Yeah.
Mick.
And so I said, I thought better qualify him because my last teacher wasn't very good. I said, well, I say, do you have a background in swimming? He said, well, I would say so. He said, I was at the 2008 and 2012 Olympics.
Wow.
I said, wow. I said, that's when Michael Phelps was there. He says, yeah, Michael and I hold the world gold record for the 4x100 relay.
What better teacher than that?
So, I mean, here's the thing. If your listeners are tuning in, when you set a big goal, right, you have to think outside of yourself, and you're always searching for opportunities. And I see this guy, I start having a conversation. The next thing is I'm getting swimming coaching from an Olympic gold medalist. So we went and had my first lesson, and he said, well, Mick, go and swim a couple of lengths. So he swim up and down. And he said to me, he said, you're a strong swimmer. He says, but let me tell you, he says, you're not going to get across the channel that way. He says, you're using way too much energy. You're splashing. You're not swimming. So, I had several lessons with him, and I continued to do that. His name is Cullen Jones, the first African-American
Wow.
on the swim team. Great guy. And then I joined a swim club where there's a community of people. So in order for you to improve, right, not only do you need to be open to your goals, but you can't achieve anything on your own by yourself. You need people around you. You need support. So my wife supports me. It's the first time I told her, hey, I'm going to swim the channel. She gets her phone out. She's skimming through BBC News on the phone. She says, look, this guy is a fireman. He's only 24 years old, and he drowned when he was swimming across the channel. And you're 64. You shouldn't be doing this kind
Oh my
of thing.
goodness.
I said, look, don't worry. Just, ignore that. I said, I'm going to be training.
Now, Mick, have you been to the English Channel to practice?
No. So here's the thing. You can't just, swim it, right? You have to book a boat because you're navigating shipping lanes, right? It's huge. And so you need a qualified boat captain. You need a timekeeper somebody to make sure that you're not touching the boat. You have to plan that nearly 2 years out. So
Wow.
I'm not going to be ready until the best time is July or August, when the tides are at their best in 2025 is my goal. But even in order to actually set off, you've got to complete several swims in colder waters. You've got to do an 8-hour night swim that's registered. So there's a lot of training to be done. I mean, I was in the pool just before this call, actually. I swam 2 miles. And I mean, I've been in the pool every day for the last year.
Oh, wow. So let's say you find that 2025 is here, you finally do the English, you do the whole swim, you finish, you conquered your dream. What next? How are you going to feel at that moment?
Oh, I've already visualized this several times. I comically see myself, stumbling out of the water onto France and ordering a croissant and a cafe au lait from the local patisserie there. But I'm going to be singing from the rooftops. I will be, I'll use it to propel my motivational speaker aspirations.
Do they give you some sort of a award or plaque or something that you did it?
No, but there's an official website that shows your GPS course across the tides and the times and your name, so you can go out there. It's about 300 people attempt it every year, and only 50 people make it.
Oh, wow. And
So
have you changed your diet? Are you eating differently?
I'm eating more. After I swam 2 miles today, the first thing I did was went on a big lunch. One of the stats is they measure how many strokes it takes you to swim a 25-meter pool. And when I started, it was taking me 19 because I've got these baby splashes. Well, I'm now down to 13. Now, if you think you're swimming for 20 hours, think how many thousands of strokes. Now, if I've gone from 19 strokes to 13 strokes for the same distance, I've taken 50% nearly, or at least a third of the strokes I would apply. So job one was technique. I'm still working on technique. Job two is going to be cold water acclimatization. And then it will be kind of diet and endurance. So there's a number of swims. My watershed moment, Alex, is going to be in, I think it's April or May this next year. There's a 12-mile swim around Charleston, South Carolina. So it's ocean swimming, because when you're in a pool, the water's flat. When you're in the ocean, these waves suddenly fill your mouth full of water. It's a whole different kettle of fish. So
Yeah.
that if I can do 12 miles in the ocean, then I think I can probably keep going in the North Sea.
Well, I hope you're documenting all this and you're filming your
Yeah,
practices and everything.
I've got a few videos of
Good.
yeah, and it's sometimes, Alex, it's very frustrating. It's such a gradual improvement. I get in the pool and I think I'm the slowest guy in the pool because all these
Well,
kids.
I think I have a feeling it has to do with your diet. So if you change your diet, you're gonna be faster.
Okay.
Let's talk about a little bit about your business. You have a very interesting business that could help many entrepreneurs like myself in the sense of growing their business. Tell us about how you got into that.
Yeah. So as we talked about earlier, I was working with large Fortune 500 companies and helping them drive change in their enterprises. And what I did was to distill all of those great techniques, ideas, practices, and I packaged them in a way that, the small solopreneur, entrepreneur, small business owner can use, because they can't hire big consulting companies, right? And they're trying to drive their business very frugally. And so what I can do is I can bring some of those techniques to help them. And I call my business by the numbers. So I want to help them understand their numbers so that they can grow their profits, they can grow their revenues, they can improve their cash flow, and they can build a wealth producing asset. Alex, you probably know this, but there are 30 million small businesses in the US. And the stats are 90% of them will fail in 10 years' time. And 7.5 million, JP Morgan did a study, 7.5 million companies only have 14 days of cash in their accounts. So if they have a bad month or a bad deal or something goes wrong, they can't pay their suppliers to get materials, or they can't even pay, their employees. Sometimes it can be very, very stressful. So managing their business and understanding their numbers is vital for them to have the longevity and the success that they need as those entrepreneurs.
So tell me, how did you get in? Well, now you told me how you got into it because of the past experience you have. How do you help? Let's say someone comes to you, an entrepreneur, they don't have enough cash flow. How do you help them? What are the first steps?
The first step would be to try and understand their goals. What are they trying to do? What's their vision for the business? Do they actually have that clarity? So I would sit down with them and really try and understand what they're trying to accomplish as a business. And then what I would do is a really, really simple diagnostic to help them identify where improvement exists. Now, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, whatever country that you're in, every company has to file a set of financial statements. They're the same everywhere, but they're unreadable, they're undecipherable. And so business owners typically don't look at them, and they only get a report once a quarter or once a year from their CPA who tells you, oh, you didn't make as much money as you thought. And so they don't use them actively to steer their business. So what I do is I like to turn the financials into a story, right? People understand stories. They get engaged in stories. And every story has characters. And the characters are in eternal. It's a story, right? And the business story can either be a comedy, right? Everything's good, or a tragedy. We're going out of business, right? So what is the story? Well, there are three characters in business, and everybody's heard of one of the characters. Everybody's heard of the king. Cash is king. But there are two other characters, vanity and sanity. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. And a lot of business owners get preoccupied with the vanity metric. I got to grow. I want to be 1 million in revenues or 500,000 in revenues. And I'm all about growth. I'm the growth guy, but there's good revenue and there's bad revenue. Now, sanity is the guy who watches the profitability. He's looking at the margins, the gross margins and the expenses. So you've got vanity, right? He's the sales guy. He thinks he can sell his way out of any problem, and he goes and finds this deal. And in order to get the deal over the line, he discounts to win it. It's a big deal, Mick. We're going to discount it. We're going to bring it in. He brings it in, and Sanity's pulling his hair out going, we're not making enough money on this deal to cover all of our costs and expenses. So we're going to go, or it's so thin that we're struggling. And so Vanity's gone out and found out these new clients. He's bringing them in, and our existing clients pay us in 30 days. And this new client, it's very complicated. They don't pay us for 120 days. So you've got to go out and spend all the money to pay your people to do it, all the money to buy the materials, right? And all this cash is going out and no cash is coming in. And so you run out of cash. Most businesses die because they run out of cash. Now, the way that vanity, sanity, and the king interact is a metaphor for the income statement, the balance sheet, and the statement of cash flows. So you don't need to look at those arcane financial statements because they're written for CPAs, they're not written for business people. So then what I do is, now we've understood the characters and the story. Every story has chapters, easily understandable chapters. And the business story has 5 chapters. Chapter 1 is all about your growth, your revenue growth. Are we growing? And what's the quality of that revenue, like I talked about? Number 2 is profitability. Chapter 2, how do we turn that revenue into superior profit? Chapter 3 is all about, I call it the hunger measure. How hungry is the business when it's using its cash? The fancy term is working capital, right? And how chapters 1, chapters 2, and chapter 3 then give you an outcome chapter of chapter 4 called cash and cash flow. So if you're a business owner, right, and most business owners are struggling with cash, they go into chapter 4 and they try and chase cash. But the seeds of cash consumption or cash generation have occurred in chapter 1, 2, or 3 in the way that vanity, sanity, and the king interact. And all 4 chapters then combine to give you the wealth metric. Is your business creating wealth for you? So what I do with people, I just give them, I ask them, what was their growth metric last year? What is their growth metric this year? What was their profit last year? What is their profit this year? I run them side by side, and in the space of 5 minutes, I can tell you whether you've got a chapter 1, a chapter 2, or a chapter 3 problem. Chapter 1, you're chasing the wrong clients. Chapter 2, you've not got good margins or your costs are out of whack. Or chapter 3, you're burning cash in ways because you're not getting paid in a timely fashion. And I can quickly give them 3 actions that they can take that will materially improve their business in the next 30 days.
Where can people find you? I'm also going to put it in the show notes, but where can people find you?
Okay, there are two links. One, that how to understand your numbers the way that I've just articulated and identify improvement in your business. I have a book on that, and you can get it for free at micksfreebook.com, MICKS book, freebook.com. And then if you want to talk to me about your business, it's best if we just have a quick conversation. In the space of 15 minutes, I'll tell you where there's opportunity, and I'm happy to do that. I don't charge for that. I want to help people. And in order to do that, you would go to speaktomick.com and you can schedule a call with me.
I want to thank you so much for being on the pod. And one more thing. Don't fall off the pod.
Listen up, podheads. Now's your chance to be on the pod. If you have a story, say it right here. Go to podwithme.com, fill out the Be Our Guest form, and submit. Very easy, right? Oh, and before I forget, go ahead and follow us on social media. The links to Facebook and Instagram are right there. I hope you really enjoyed this episode. I'm Alex J. Aguiar, and until next time, don't fall off the pod.